today. My name is Snezhana, and I am going to start my presentation now. So, yes, hi. So, can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay, well, all right. Today we're going to talk about how to provide correct citation and references for your research. And I just wanted to mention that Editage is a division of Cactus Communications that was established with the aim to bridge the gap between authors and peer-reviewed journals and to accelerate the process of publishing high-quality research. So we are armed with one of the largest teams of scientific collaborators worldwide, with over 2,500 editors, trainers, and publication support experts. And for over 2 decades, we have provided high quality services to our partners in the academic, publishing, and pharmaceutical communities. And today's seminar is in line with our efforts. And so today, I will give you a brief introduction to the motivation for the session today. Then we will look at the citations, referencing, and bibliography. We will try to define what they are and what differences are. We will look at different citation and referencing styles with a particular focus on the AP 7th edition referencing style. And we will also mention about the plagiarism, which is to be avoided in academic or any scientific settings, as well as the list of resources that you can hopefully put to good use in your own work. So when we talk about academic writing, anything we write or state that doesn't come from ourselves needs to basically be credited to its proper author. And basically, this is one of these academic conventions that we need to follow, which is really to use referencing and citations and to demonstrate highest academic integrity by referencing those who deserve it. So what is it? What do we mean by citation? And then what do we mean by reference? Because they do refer to different things. So the citations usually appear in the main text, in the essay or paper or whatever it is you're working on. And in this text, we have to give credit for the information that you've mentioned. And we need to recognize the original source of information. And basically, whenever you're using information to elaborate a particular concept, either in the introduction or discussion and so on, you do need to use citations. Okay, so now references are basically detailed description of the information that you have used for your writing. And it's usually at the end of the paper, let's say there would be a list, and this allows readers to be able to locate the particular source that you have used that may be of interest to them. So finally, what do we mean by bibliography? So this is really a list of resources that can also be at the end of a research paper or an article. And it basically contains all your wider reading of the topic. May not be the one you necessarily directly used in writing, okay? So basically, the difference between reference and bibliography is that an individual source in the list of references can be linked to in-text citation. And in bibliography case, the individual resource may not necessarily be linked. So for practical purposes, when we do scientific writing, we focus on the references. That means mentioning only those sources of information that you've directly used in the citations in your paper. So you may wonder, why do we need to use citations and references? The main thing is that it recognizes the original source of material that you used and makes a clear distinction between your own ideas and opinions and those of the others. And this really shows your command of the field, if you will. And most importantly, it avoids plagiarism, which is a quite serious offense in the academia or science in general. And so we'll come to that at the end. So the question is, when do you need to use citations in your work? So it's basically anytime you need to provide credit to somebody. And for instance, if you're stating in your own words the ideas of others, which is also called paraphrasing, or if you're using direct quotes, if you're referring to somebody else's data or data sets, if you have used a table or a figure from another paper, and so on. So, and really, the number of papers that you would reference, for instance, in a scientific publication, depends on a number of factors, including the limit that you have to respect if you were to submit to a proper journal for publication. Sometimes they have a limit to how many references you can use. So there is this phenomena of underciting or oversighting. So by underciting, underciting can be quite dangerous. That means when you do not recognize ideas and information you've taken from other sources, and this usually leads to plagiarism, which is almost impossible to avoid, to be detected, considering that now we have quite sophisticated search engines that do the work for us and that can match your text to anything ever published on Earth, pretty much. And then there is this other phenomena of overcitation, which can be quite distracting when you read the articles. And one of the most classical examples of oversighting is when, for instance, you read some interesting piece of work and then you paraphrase or you use the information from it in multiple sentences in your work, in your writing. And so instead of repeating the citation in every sentence you write, what you can do is use the citation in the first relevant sentence. And then as long as the information is coming from that initial citation, you don't have to keep repeating it until you switch, the sources or something like this. Okay, so what do we mean by citation styles? So we all come from different academic disciplines, and each discipline has their own way of how they like you to organize and present things and resources. And these are really published rules, and they're called style manuals. And there are some differences between different citation systems, but it's basically, the idea is the same, that it really allows people to have fluent written communication. And today I will focus on this APA citation style, which is quite frequently used in different social and natural sciences. It's used in business as well. It was first established in 1929, and we've come to see, the 7th edition over the last 8 years. And APA style relies on in-text citations for material that needs to be cited in the form of parentheses, author, comma, date. And these in-text citations would correspond to resources in your references list at the end of your work. And so just to briefly mention reference lists, right? So this is where you write all the information, all the sources you've used for your work. And I've listed here some simple rules, if you will, to follow when creating lists. And for this particular style, they like your references to be in alphabetical order by author's first author's last name. And then there is some, aesthetic things about indenting half an inch from the second line of a reference and so on. But those are just details. And there is different rules on how to cite different forms of writings. And this is just giving examples of different things like journal articles, or when you have multiple authors, or when it's a book, and so on. So you can see examples of what the citations look like. So, but the main thing is when we also do is what is called in-text citations. So this is when we want to acknowledge the source by using author, year of publication within your text. And that's obligatory in order to avoid plagiarism that we'll come to. So now, in addition to the simple in-text citations, there is also maybe instances when you will need to provide direct quotation within your text. And there you need to provide the author, the year, and the page number where you've taken the quotation from, okay? And then there is different variations to how you would use this direct quotation. And I'm including a couple of more examples below. So if you introduced a quotation with a single phrase that includes author's name, like in this case, according to so-and-so, then you put the year in the parenthesis, and then you proceed with your quote, and you put the page number at the end. And so, so there's different forms of direct citations, and you will have these slides available, I believe, to you after the seminar. So you'll be able to locate exactly what works best in your case. There's also instances, for instance, when you have group or an organization as an author. So how would you use insight referencing for that? And this is one case when we have the name of the organization within your text, or in parenthetical citations, the first name you cite the source is the same way you would with an individual person. So you put, the name of the association or organization, and then the year that would refer to your reference. And so there is also sometimes abbreviations that can be used that are quite well established, and so on. So in the subsequent slides, I will show you different citation styles, and then within those, there would be a number of examples and different variations like I've shown already. So in the interest of time, I would not dwell too much on each individual variation, but hopefully when you get to apply this to your work, you will be able to see exactly what it is that you need to do for referencing and in-text citations. So there is also a situation where you have more than one reference by the same author in the same year. And in that case, you basically order the references in the way they appear in your text, and then you put you use lowercase letters such as A, B, and C, or so on after the year in order the entries in the reference list to be recognizable. And when you have a case when you cite more works in the same in-text citation, you can order them in the way they appear in the reference list. So that would be usually by alphabetical order, okay? And you can separate them by semicolons. And if you need to cite different works in different years by the same author, you would then put the name of the author and the years in chronological order. This is more details about different forms of direct quotations that I will leave for you to review. In the interest of time, you may also come across needing to cite some books. So this is a general way to do it. So you go by the author's first you put last name, then initials, year of publication, title, edition, publisher's name. In case it's an ebook, you would also add to this the digital object identifier or the URL for the publication. And there are also examples to help you guide that. And then finally, a lot of us in science, at least, we end up citing journals. And nowadays, most of them are electronic, but there can still be some printed versions. And this is showing here the general order of information. So you need the last name, initial, year of publication, title of article, of journal, volume, issue, page numbers. That's the order of information to appear. The year goes in parentheses, title of journal and volume are in italics. And for the online journals, it's quite similar, except you also need to include the digital object identifier, which is basically like a little URL for the paper. And there are different types of review articles and journal articles and so on that you could encounter. So this is giving you solutions on how to reference those properly. And then if we have the newspapers, for instance, we need to reference them as well with this information such as last name, initials, year, month, date of publication, title of article, title of publication, page numbers, and then URL if it's online. We also can reference the websites, and there are different flavors of it, such as having a group author or individual authors. And we can also have websites that have no date to them, or if you're referring to the website in general, such as in this example of Qualtrics, that's a survey software, so you could just have a link to that. And finally, you may want to also reference reports. And this is usually the reports can contain original research, but they may not be peer-reviewed. And so the general requirements are listed as in last name, initial, organization name, year, title of reports in italics, and then who published it, as well as the URL or DOI. And now this all may sound quite daunting, if you will, to have so many things to worry about. And the good news is that there are things like what they call citation generators, which are tools that can help you configure the citations based on your requirements. And I'm listing 3 options here, but you may as well find more if you Google them. One thing to keep in mind in this case is that the accuracy of results may not be guaranteed, because a lot of these styles get updated every so often, and we don't know whether the software actually updated the rules, if you will. And so it's always a good idea to manually check to make sure that this is all good. And finally, another quite useful thing, it's called the citation management tools. So what that is basically a software that helps you track and cite sources as you research the papers. And most of these citation management software have similar abilities, which is to collect and organize your citations, as well as to you allow you some rubrics to take notes or your observations and so on. And this is sort of creating a very useful database, if you will, that then you can search when you need to find a particular reference. It also allows you to export the references you want to use in a particular format as required by your writing. And some of the long-standing ones, I'm highlighting here 3 of them, which is called EndNote, Zotero, and Scywheel, right? and they're all quite similar. There is some differences, and if you're based at a research university or organization, they may actually provide you with free access to them. So this is comparing the cost, among other things, between different possibilities. So if you use EndNote Online, that's free. And I would recommend trying it if you haven't, because it's quite time saving, if you will. Once you've written all your work, to have to sort out through your references can be, a lot of work depending on extent, but this could help you in what you're doing. So finally, all of this we do to acknowledge other people's work. And if we don't, then we get to perform some serious offense in academic world. And that's this whole business of plagiarism. And that means when you disregard someone's work, that means you don't give them credit, okay? And this basically denies authors or creators of content the credit that they deserve. And this plagiarism business truly violates ethical standards in scholarship. Okay, it's the most serious academic misconduct you can make. However, there is easy way to avoid it, which is basically to provide credit to your sources of information. And I've already said, in today's day and age, there's no way you can not get caught if you plagiarize, okay? And so, however, we do know that it's usually done out of ignorance rather than on purpose. And most of the time, the reason is poor referencing. So this is why it is extremely important to get those references right. And I really hope that what I've shared with you today would be useful to you. And this is the list of additional resources that you may find useful. So University of Purdue has this website that you can look for different formatting and style guides. And I put here the link for APA, but it can actually work for any formatting you need. APA in particular has their own, style and grammar guidelines. There are then different blogs that Edited created that deal with the citations and how to cite and so on. So I really hope this will be quite useful. So thank you again for your participation in the tutorial. And I guess we can now open the floor to discussions. I'm going to switch. Okay, so I see we have one comment here. Let me just read it. So in a review paper on definitions of a scientific concept, okay, if we summarize these definitions from different papers and tables, do we need to put these definitions, if they are words to word in quote marks, when we have them, we have the source listed next to them? I don't know how to paraphrase scientific definitions, right? Can you give me an example of what it is? For instance, are you defining a word atom or, something generic like this, or what is it that, because the definition would be the words used to describe the term. Is that, so you need to define the terms, is it, or I just need a bit more information to answer this, because when I was talking, I wasn't able to see this screen. Pretty, are you still with us? I see. Review of paper on terms not to define. Okay, the Vancouver style is its own style, so you can Google that as well, or you can look at that Purdue website or something like this. So Vancouver style has their own special requirements, if you will. And so Pretty, to answer your question, I would say that if you have terms, so those terms you don't need to use quotations for them because they're generally accepted terms, and every definition you create should be in your own words. I mean, that would be my understanding. If you are literally taking the definition from another text, then you need to somehow emphasize that it's been quoted. So I know that in the table it would look kind of ugly to have quotation marks around the definitions, but that may be what you need to do depending on which style you're using. But you should always, unless you're paraphrasing, you should always use quotation marks for direct quotes. Does that help? Okay, good. Um, yeah, so I would paraphrase and I would put reference next to each definition to make sure. Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, let me then see what happened in the chat. There was some. Right, Robert, I see what you mean about APA. The thing is that it's not possible, to do everything in 20 minutes to cover possibly all the citation styles. So we just picked APA because that tends to be quite used across different disciplines. Yeah, so yeah, but we can definitely do any of the styles that would be useful. Okay, let me see. Can you can you review over citation again and how to avoid it? Right. So, for instance, you read the paper, and out of that paper, you write in your own words, let's say 5 different sentences that are all coming from that one paper. So, what we do in this case is in the first sentence where you use information from that paper, that's where you put the reference to that paper. And then all the subsequent sentences that are referring to the same publication, you don't have to cite again. Okay, until you start talking about something from another publication. Does that help, Ashley? Okay, cool. And I believe you should be receiving the slides I've used today, so maybe it will be helpful. Okay, so anytime we use 5 words from a paper, we have to cite that paper. Okay, pretty. So what you use from the paper is the information. If you will copy 5 words, then you need to put that in the direct quotations. Okay, and yes, anytime you use even one single piece of information, you need to identify where that information is coming from. Does that help? Okay, yeah. Do we have any other questions? hopefully some of these links will be useful for those that need more details of other styles at the moment. Okay, so if there's no more questions, thank you all for coming here, and we would close today's session if there's no other questions. Okay. Okay, thank you, and thank you, Robert. Thank you. I'm glad you found it useful because the citations are really very painful, but we do need to do them. That's part of our job, right? So, yeah, and different journals like different styles and all kinds of things. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and we'll hopefully see you on another webinar.